to our Fall 26 RSI Overview and Faculty Roundtable WoW session. I'm really excited to have you here. This has really been actually, I think a really fun session to put together in collaboration with our RSI faculty partners and team, as well as the pod division and the distance learning team. So we're really happy to be able to share with you what hopefully you'll find is a really excellent balance of overview and information and presentation of some key knowledge, as well as some, experienced faculty members, experienced online faculty members sharing with us some of those practical tips, as well as some, interactive strategies to get us all working on our RSI a little bit. So hopefully, you'll have a really meaningful, enjoyable time with this experience as much as we had putting it together. So before we get too much further, one thing I just wanted to mention to clear the air a little bit is, as you've probably surely noticed, this is our only afternoon RSI, our only workshop on Wednesday session this afternoon. And there's a really good reason for that. That was ultimately a recommendation made by our Faculty Professional Development Committee and our RSI Academic Senate ad hoc. We understand that not all faculty are online instructors, and so the session here might not be perfectly relevant for everybody, but this was really the best strategy that we had available to reach as broad of a faculty as possible. So, hopefully, that's agreeable, understandable to everybody. And because, as we've been saying in a lot of other contexts, RSI is at the heart of what we do in all of our modalities. We really hope that, regardless if you're not online instructor, you'll still find a lot of value in this particular session. So, if you don't mind, I'll just break down the outline of what's coming up in the session on the next slide here. I'll let you know what our breakdown is. So obviously the welcome. We'll do some introductions in a minute, then we'll have a breakdown of the RSI introduction and the three pillars of what RSI is about, as well as then some helpful tools in meeting RSI, sort of a breakdown of the information. We'll take that'll be the distance learning team breaking that down for us. I'm really grateful to them for that. Then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come in with a group of experienced online instructors, some RSI partners, and some other folks we brought in to share with you some of their suggestions. And then we'll have some final tips and a Q&A at the end. In terms of just some, announcements about what we're doing and the way things are set up. Keep in mind, this is a Zoom webinar. It was really the only way to make this, the volume for the amount of people that are involved. So that means that there's, some different features in terms of the chat being disabled and all that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. As you know, we're from 1:30 to 3:30, 10-minute break in the middle. As you can see here, some of the things I've just mentioned. Q&A is on, but the chat is off. So please feel free to, submit or questions or comments through the Q&A. And then, we'll have a quick poll to get us started. As soon as somebody is going to jump in and take that over. Then that's the next thing I want to do is a couple of quick introductions for you, if you don't mind. So the next slide is, I believe, our distance learning team. So these are the folks who are really going to be providing us some really excellent instruction, some support knowledge about RSI. Aisha Gaines is one of our instructional designers, so is Tara Wolf, will really be helping us out. Cindy Birdsong is the Canvas administrator. She really does more of the sort of in the background of the Canvas nuts and bolts, you might say. And Tracy Gomez is our Dean of Professional Organizational Development and also filling in as our current distance learning director. So, and you can see on the screen, I'm your interim distance learning faculty coordinator, which is why I'm here doing the talking at the beginning. And I'll be here to help you out however I can. So then I would just like to take a minute to introduce you to the RSI team. We showed you some of these folks the other day at convocation, and and hopefully you're getting familiar with who these folks are. These are really our, you might say, our online instructor all-stars, folks who, are how we say, have really a lot of knowledge and skills and practice in the online environment. And they've, how we say, taken on this role to really help us, not just with the knowledge, but on, the hands-on and the mentoring and et cetera. So some of these folks will be sharing with us later, but it's a really good idea to know who these folks are in case you want to reach out for some support. So you can see Delana Augustino, and Michelle McFarland, Michelle Laird, Jennifer Molina, Andrea Neptune, Jay Hester, Mattia Mukatomi, Angie Rivers, Christy Corral, and I can't see that one because the pops at Amy Myers, Lynette Vrooman, and Tamal Wright. And just really a lot of gratitude and appreciation to these folks for all their help, and also and as well as the distance learning team, who I think we're about to head into sharing a little bit of what is RSI. And at this point, I will be handing it over to Aisha and Tara. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in. So let's go ahead and get started with some basics here. So RSI stands for Regular and Substantive Interaction. I'm sure you all have heard this plenty of times already. So regular, making sure it's going throughout your course, and substantive, that it is meaningful and you're making those connections with students. So to meet the effective practices RSI requirements, your course should include these three things. Communication expectations should be clearly established. And by communication expectations, this is what students can expect from you as the instructor. So, what is your email response time? How often and when will you send announcements? When will you be participating in discussions, right? How will you be reaching out to your students in general? Letting them know that from the very beginning can be really helpful in framing how your teaching style is and let students know what they can expect from you during the course. Next is instructor interaction with students weekly. If you're teaching a 16-week course, this would be once per week. If you're teaching 8-week course, this would be 2 touch points each week. And we'll go into more details with each of these areas later on in the webinar. The third part of here is student interaction with their peers weekly. So similar to instructor interaction, giving them the opportunity in discussion boards, peer reviews, on wiki pages where everyone can edit and share their ideas in many different places. So giving them a chance to interact with their peers and create that space where they can begin to build community. All right, got a little ahead of myself here. So interaction should be weekly, and this is according to our effective practices at Sierra College and is really like the ceiling when we talk about the ACCJC or accreditation standards. And so this should really be your goal. And RSI requirements are really integral in building that community and keeping that communication going, whether you're teaching in person, hybrid, or online classes, although of course these are going to look a little bit different. So within your 16-week courses, there should be one of each, one instructor to student interaction and one student to student interaction each week. And of course, this is an assignment, some way for students to interact with each other. Whether every single student is actually participating in that discussion, you're not held responsible for that, of course. There's no way to try to implement that, but that you are assigning points or having some sort of credit, non-credit scoring system to show students that it is important that they engage with their peers. And then for our student to student, making sure that you're having two, or for 8-week courses, that you're having 2 instructor interactions and 2 student to student interactions. And we'll look at some details and examples in a little while. And with these is just condensing that time of the course from 16 weeks to 8 weeks and keeping that ratio between content and interaction and building community about the same, even though it's a shorter term class. All right. So why is RSI important in your courses? So there are many different reasons, of course, and where these different standards have come from. So RSI stands for, you think in your head, regular and substantive interaction. And so, although this may feel like a requirement, it's really the fun part about teaching, building community and making connections with your students. Oftentimes, we hear from faculty that the part that they miss about teaching in person is building those connections with students and creating those relationships, and really having that back and forth conversation. And so this is a way to kind of ensure that those things are also happening within the online space for those fully online courses. And of course, we have that RSI policy that came down from Academic Senate in May of 2025, and then the addendum that came out in May of 2026 that kind of helped clarify some of that language, helped kind of align it to the ACCJC rubric. Not sure how many of you all saw that, but that is a lot to digest and a lot to figure out. And so we're grateful for Academic Senate and our RSI folks here of trying to make that a little bit easier to understand. So in addition to coming from this year college policies, those policies are also included and based off of California Title V, and also federal requirements that are kind of evaluated through the ACCJC. So if you are meeting Sierra College best practices, you are also meeting all of those other areas as well. So here we do have so many different links. I'm not going to read through all of this, but kind of gives kind of a references list of where all of this information comes from. So of course, if you're interested, when we send out the recording and a copy of the slides, you will, or a document with all the references on it, you are welcome to explore these if you'd like. But this is more of a reference page. All right. Communication expectations. So throughout the webinar, we're going to be focusing, or the first half or so of the webinar, we'll be looking at the three main parts of RSI: communication expectations, instructor to student interaction, and then that student to student or student peer interaction piece. So for each of these, we'll kind of break it down. We'll explain it a little bit more. We'll look at some examples, and also give you a chance for some reflection as we move through these as well. So we ask that you kind of keep an open mind, think about this very much as a way of how to improve what you're already doing, and acknowledging that you probably have already most of these things already covered, and just what little tweaks or changes that we can make to make sure that all of our students are supported. So communication expectations. These should be included in a clear and obvious place, such as your syllabus. If you have an orientation module, that would be a great place to put it, or even your course homepage, especially towards the beginning of the semester. It can be really helpful in orienting students and giving them that clear information of how they can reach out to you from the very beginning if they run into any trouble or if they have any questions. So any of those areas that work best for you in your course would be a great place. It should describe how students can expect regular interaction, responses to messages, and feedback from the instructor. It should include when and how often students can expect feedback and grades on assignments and in what format. So part of RSI is going beyond just assigning a grade or just clicking boxes within a rubric. It's about giving meaningful feedback beyond great job or thank you for submitting on time. But letting them know really what did they do well? What can they continue to do in order to keep getting great grades? Or what are some areas that they can really improve on for next time in order to improve on their next assignment? And also in what format? Looking at the second piece here, will you be giving feedback in text, in audio, leaving voice messages or voice feedback, or will you even add some video feedback from time to time? Letting them know what to expect. So if students happen to be used to um, receiving text only feedback through all of their courses at Sierra, and then all of a sudden you post a video feedback in that split second before they hear what you have to say, they may think, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? What is different about what I did this time that required my teacher to give me video feedback? Or, oh my goodness, I knocked it out of the water. I did so amazing. Look at this beautiful video feedback I'm going to get. And so in that split second, students are already making assumptions about what that video means. So if you let them know from the beginning that you may be giving video feedback throughout the course, they'll already kind of have that in the back of their mind that they will get video feedback from time to time. And if you primarily give text feedback, that is great as well, right? You don't have to use all of these formats, but whichever way you typically use in your courses, let students know what they can expect from you. This next part is on announcements and in what format you'll be sending those announcements in. So announcements are, of course, part of Canvas where you can update students, but making sure that your announcements are substantive in that you are not just reminding of due dates, or you're not just sending a happy Monday, how was your weekend? Or wow, this weather's really nice, but also giving them some kind of additional instruction, maybe giving a little bit of feedback, or even saying something like, hey, I started looking at your assignments or your discussion posts, and so far you all are right on track, but I want to clarify, right, that instruction moment. I want to clarify this part about some of your responses. Or maybe giving them some tips if you're starting to see assignments come in that are kind of missing the same section, and kind of making sure that you're giving students that extra hints or extra support at a time when they really need it. So making them a little more useful and making them a little more supportive for your students. And of course, making sure that they know what to expect from that. Let them know whether you'll be participating in discussions, right? Whether you are actively involved in discussions, you're asking follow-up questions in the main discussion board, or you are steering the conversation or keeping the conversation on track against the question prompt. Or whether you like to keep it more of a student-centered space and you prefer to maybe give feedback in the assignment comments box. Whatever you typically do, just communicate that to your students so they know. All instructors may have their own way of teaching their courses or managing their discussion boards. But there's no way to know what kind of prior experience your students have already had, what they are used to. And although it may feel really obvious to you to state these things, it will be immensely helpful for your students to understand. And then the last part, I'm sure you all already have this, but your response time to emails or LMS messages, our Canvas inbox messages. So whichever one you use, making sure that your students know when to expect a message back. And if they don't hear from you within, I don't know, 3 days or 4 days, if you have a certain time, you want them to email you again, right? Just in case your inbox has been overflowing lately. Letting them know when they should expect a response and kind of managing expectations as well. Making sure that they know maybe if you don't check your email over the weekend, that they can manage their expectations as well, that you're going to respond on Monday. They can send the email, but they may not get a response right away. As well as knowing that you're available on what times or what days and when they can reasonably expect a response. All right, we are going to start with this first example. And I would like to start by saying the examples that I share here were shared out during OTC I believe, last summer. And so we have permission to share these out. They were shared openly. You are welcome to take these, adapt them, make them your own um, as we go on. So in case you're on a smaller screen, I'll go ahead and read this one for you. So this first example comes from Suni from New York. So as your instructor, I plan to interact and engage with each of you on a regular basis throughout the term to support your learning. I will provide direct instruction related to the course's learning objectives, respond to your questions, grade, and or provide actionable feedback on your what types of assignments, post announcements, however often, and engage in the course discussion in whatever tools and maybe how many students you respond to regarding academic course content when appropriate. So here we have some kind of space savers or areas to kind of prompt you to fill in your own individual policies here in order to help create your plan. So this one, of course, isn't a narrative version, paragraph. Okay to read, although it could be improved by maybe having some more student-friendly language, right? Provide actionable feedback. May not be understood by all of your students, but maybe giving, helpful feedback to help you improve, or something like that would probably be a little bit easier for students to respond, or to understand, but this is a great start. Now, if we go to our second example, this one was adapted from Yavapai's college statement on RSI. They have a very similar format, paragraph form, narrative form, and of course we have those lovely placeholders there to remind you what to add. And it reads as, in this course, I will be available for students during scheduled office hours. I will also spend each week facilitating discussions about course content in whichever tool, providing substantive and actionable feedback on whatever type of assignments, responding to questions about the course, giving your response time, and posting announcements, however often, pertaining to the course content. So this could be a really helpful one. I feel like it checks a few more boxes of what we are hoping for here at Sierra College. And it's, I think, pretty easy to read. Besides providing substantive and actionable feedback, I feel like it's pretty student-friendly language and pretty easy to read here. Now, if we go to the third example, this one comes from Sierra College's RSI policy and was created by a faculty member last year and is part of the RSI policy from 2025. And this one is quite different in format. It is also spans 2 Canvas slides, so bear with me here. We have a little introductory statement as well as what are bullet points, which Canvas doesn't like to display, but a bullet point and bolded font here for assignment feedback, weekly announcements, Canvas messages, discussion participation, and then has a nice little supportive closing sentence here. So, of course, this was created by a Sierra College faculty. And so it hits all the boxes, all the marks that we would like to see according to our policies, and is a little bit easier to scan and read because of those bullet points and the bold font. So here we go. To help you stay on track and feel supported throughout the course, here's what you could expect from me in terms of communication and feedback. So assignment feedback. I will provide written feedback on major assignments, such as projects and essays, within 7 days of the due date. And as a note, this is just an example date frame. If you maybe need 14 days to grade 80 papers or essays, that's okay. Just let students know what to expect for there. All right, continuing with the example. So feedback will typically provided as text comments and or rubric scores through Canvas SpeedGrader. Occasionally, I may include audio or video feedback when it better supports your learning. So here we have all of that information about grading and feedback. We have the modality that feedback will come in, as well as the time frame they can expect. All right, now I won't read all of these because I'm sure you don't want to hear my voice for that much text. But the format follows a very similar pattern, right? For weekly announcements, the fact that they will be weekly and they will be on Mondays, to introduce content, highlight due dates, and offer tips for success. So remember that offering tips for success, that instruction piece, that takes it from just kind of an administrative reminder of due dates to actually making it meaningful and helpful for students, right? Letting them know might be in text, might be a short video. Great to know. Also, for students receiving notification emails on announcements, they will not be able to see your videos. Okay, that part does not come through in the notification email. So it would also be really helpful for them if, great, they enable their notifications. I love that. However, you may want to add a little line like, please watch the video below to learn about more of what we'll discuss this week. That way they can kind of see that hint that maybe they need to go to Canvas and read the actual announcement in order to view the video. And this continues with Canvas messages. So what is your turnaround time for answering messages? Also here showing that they will primarily be using Canvas messages and not necessarily the Outlook email. Generally, from distance learning, we suggest using the Canvas inbox simply because if your course is going through the online course review process, you're being evaluated and someone is checking out your Canvas course. If your course happens to be pulled for accreditation, for all of these reasons, it is trackable and viewable in analytics. However, if you're emailing students directly from your Outlook email, there is no trace of that within your Canvas course. Okay. If you are replying to a notification of a Canvas inbox message, yes, that goes back through Canvas inbox and there will be that piece to it. Okay. And then discussion participation, right? Will they be participating? Their goal is to model thoughtful engagement and keep the conversation moving forward. It says you can expect my participation at least twice during each discussion. And one thing that I do really like about this part is that they name exactly how often they'll be in the discussion so that if students are wondering, oh, where's my instructor? Are they even reading my posts? Where do they go? They know that they'll be there sometime within that time period and they'll respond to two people. So not everybody is going to get a personalized response, but they will be there for two posts during the discussion. And so I feel like it frames it really well of exactly what their participation will look like. All right. And then our last line here, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. I'm here to support your success. All right. We have a short reflection here we're going to build in. So think about it. Maybe make yourself a note for later going to your syllabus. So number one, what parts of the communication expectation statement do you already have in your syllabus or welcome module? What are you already doing great? What are you on track for? And then number two, what do you still need to add, right? You're not sharing this out. This is just between you and you. What do you need to add? Make yourself a note so that when you're looking at your syllabus or your orientation module or your homepage, it'll be a lot easier to get started, right? You have a starting point and you know what to do next. So go ahead and take the next minute or two to think about it. All right. Excellent. Well, then I am going to pass this over to Aisha to get us started on our next section.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Aisha Gaines. I'm an instructional designer here in the distance learning department. So I'll be going over first the instructor to student interaction portion and then our student to student interaction portion. All right, so Tara has kind of already given a very brief overview of that instructor to student interaction, but instructor to student interaction is essentially another part of RSI or regular and substantive interaction. And this instructor to student interaction refers to that weekly interaction that you are having with your students. And also the Code of Federal Regulations. This sets the federal rules for the things like the credit hours and your academic engagement and accreditation standards with your students. And it's just to ensure that schools have processes in place to follow these standards and rules. Alrighty, and according to the ACCJC, so when we're thinking about instructor to student interaction, you want to think about the interaction that you are initiating with your students. And you want to make sure that that contact is frequent and predictable. So if we look back to the communication policy where you're letting your students know your email turnaround time, you're letting them know your frequency of feedback and announcements, that kind of ties into that instructor to student interaction, making sure that it's frequent and predictable. You want to make sure that these interactions are substantive and academic in nature. And in the next few slides, we'll give a little bit more examples on what that actually means about substantive and academic in nature. But I'll say in general, you want to make sure that the interactions that you are having with your student directly relate to your actual content within the course. And it may have been mentioned already, but if you're making an announcement, you want to make sure that it's saying more than have a great Monday. Maybe you are giving more instructions or information about a particular topic that you are covering within the course. Again, ensuring that it is actually aligned with the content within the course. And then other elements of instructor to student interaction are monitoring your student engagement and their success in the course. Reaching out to students who maybe they have fallen off within the course, maybe they were very active in the course for the first few weeks, but then you kind of see them start to slack off or just not participating at all, making sure that we're kind of reaching out to those students, letting them know that we're there to support them, and if they need any additional help or resources, making sure that we're there for them. And then this last bullet point of proactively engaging with the students when needed, kind of those two bullet points kind of go hand in hand. Just making sure that we're kind of keeping up with students and their interaction within the course, just to show that we're there to support them and that, again, we're there as instructors to answer questions or provide any additional support or resources as needed. Slide. Okay. So as far as some examples with the instructor to student interaction, so our first example that we have is participation in Canvas discussions. WeVideo, formerly known as PlayPosit, or maybe use Harmonize, Lucid, or some other platform for your discussions. That is an example of that instructor to student interaction. In particular, if you are making your own post within one of these platforms that allows students to respond to you. So that could be maybe you have an introduction discussion where you are asking students, maybe why they signed up for the class, introducing themselves. Let's know a little bit more about you. And as the instructor, you do the same by responding to the discussion with who you are, and so students are able to respond to you as well. But also responding to other students' discussion posts as well could be that instructor to student interaction. Another important example of instructor to student interaction is feedback on student work. And when we're talking about feedback, we want feedback that is more than good job or great work. You want to make sure that you're letting students know, what they did well on, maybe what they could do better on. And so just some examples of that could be in the form of assignment comments within the Canvas SpeedGrader, which is pretty nice. You're able to add in text comments, audio comments as well. So a lot of different things to make that feedback more engaging. If you have rubrics or use rubrics within your course, if you are adding in additional comments to those rubrics, so of course you kind of set up the rubrics and you can select the different rubric levels, but then you also have the option to add in comments within each section of the rubric, and those comments itself would be considered that instructor to student interaction. You are also able to annotate students' work. So if students are submitting something like a PDF, a PowerPoint, or a Word document, the SpeedGrader does have an annotation tool where you can highlight text. You can add different comments on text to student submissions, and that will all show up for the student. With that option, we do say if you know that you have a student who is using a screen reader, for example, you want to make sure that whatever comments that you are annotating or things that you are highlighting, make sure that you put those comments within the speed grader. Because while the student will be able to sort of access what you've said, they won't necessarily know at what point within the paper or PowerPoint that you actually made that comment. So kind of providing them with a little more context on where you made a specific content for those students who may be using a screen reader. Another example of feedback would be a class-wide announcement summarizing results. So maybe you've graded all of your students' assignments and you don't necessarily want to go in and individually leave feedback for each student. You can kind of summarize your findings for that assignment and make it an announcement. And that would be instructor to student interaction as well in the form of feedback. And kind of the same thing with this next bullet point is announcements. You can do feedback within an announcement, but just making sure that the announcement is course related and not generic. And then also video conferencing, whether that's Zoom, Teams, or some other platform. Maybe you have student office hours where students can come in and ask questions. Maybe you have study sessions for students. Whatever that looks like, that could be instructor to student interaction as well. It's giving students the opportunity to interact with you, the instructor, and you are initiating that contact with them. And then the same goes for direct communication, whether that is through the Canvas inbox, which we recommend just because it's easier to track within Canvas, but also email and Canvas announcements as well. And so we do have an activity on this slide. It is our first time doing a Zoom webinar, so I'm not sure how it will go. But essentially, we have a list of different, I'll say, activities that could be instructor interaction or simply instructor presence. If you think that it is interaction, you can use that raise hand function. So I'll read each one off, and then if you think that it is interaction, you can raise your hand, and then I'll give a brief explanation on whether it's interaction or presence. So number one, we have posting a welcome video. Oh gosh, we're getting a lot of raised hands. Okay, I'm getting quite a few raised hands. So this one is a little, I won't say it's confusing, but it is one that kind of trips people up a little bit. So posting a welcome video itself would not be considered that instructor to student interaction. It's not really providing students with the opportunity to respond to you. It definitely is present. It definitely is showing that you exist and that you are the instructor in the course, but it is not interaction. But if you would like to make that an instructor to student interaction, you could encourage students to respond to your video. So maybe making that welcome video an announcement and asking students to, I don't know, respond what they're excited for in the course, or maybe something that scares them about starting this course. Something that is asking students to interact with you from that video could be that interaction portion, but just posting the video itself would not be considered instructor to student interaction. Okay, number two, I have instructor's personal introduction if included as a post in the introduction discussion. Okay, awesome. I've got a lot of hands for that. So yes, that is that instructor to student interaction. You are actively engaging within the discussion with the students, and it is providing them the opportunity to respond and reach out to you. Okay, number three, we have feedback on student work. Awesome. We have a lot of hands up for that one. That one's a little bit more straightforward. Feedback on student work is instructor interaction. So as long as it is substantive and it directly relates to the student's post, and is more than saying good work or good job, letting students know what they did well on and areas that they could improve on. Number four, I have instructional videos. Okay, got a few hands for that one, but not as many. Okay, so yes, that is instructor presence. I always say you should probably have something like that anyways, for your students. So just having instructional videos are not considered that instructor to student interaction. Great. And number five, instructions for completing and submitting student work. Not as many hands for that one. Okay. All right. So it seems like most people kind of have the same thoughts about that. That is instructor presence. You should have the instructions for completing and submitting work anyway, so students know what to do in your assignments. Where that could be instructor to student interaction is maybe after students have started submitting assignments and you're kind of noticing that students are struggling with certain areas of the assignment and you decide to make an announcement with additional instructions for maybe completing and submitting it and additional resources for the assignment. That in particular could be instructor to student interaction. And number six, we have direct communication. Yes, a lot of hands for that one. So yes, that is instructor interaction. You're directly reaching out to your students and contacting them and starting that communication with them, whether that's via the Canvas inbox, email, or some other platform that you are using to communicate with your students. And then number seven, we have sending out a welcome letter with your communication policy. You have a few hands for that one as well. So sending out a welcome letter with your communication policy would be considered instructor presence. So while the communication policy is a part of RSI, sending that out via welcome letter is not necessarily considered that instructor to student interaction. Kind of similar to posting the welcome video. If you would like that to be an element of instructor to student interaction, you could encourage your students to um, respond to that welcome letter with, whatever information that you would like them to respond with. But just sending the welcome letter on its own would not be considered that instructor to student interaction. Great. Great. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing with the raising of hands. We're all learning here today. Alrighty, and so we do have some instructor to student interaction resources. So if you would like to just kind of take a photo of this QR code, that will land you at our faculty resource guide to the instructor to student interaction page with a lot of these examples and more resources. Yes, I'll go ahead and answer a question here. I see that Kim Stevens said, what about having the comment box for each video and responding when appropriate? I think that is RSI. I would agree. I would just say, just to be, I guess, on the safer side, encouraging your students to respond via that comment box to show that you're kind of initiating that contact or initiating their response to your video, then that would definitely be considered RSI. Awesome. So now I'll touch on student to student interaction. I feel like this is an area that people are probably already doing really well on. I'll try not to take too long because I also know we have a few more slides and then we have some faculty examples that will be really helpful for you as well. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so similar to instructor to student interaction, the student to student interaction is one part of RSI. And it refers to the weekly interaction amongst your students, interacting with each other within the same space. And so this could be any activity or project, again, where students are interacting together within the space, whether that is a discussion, some sort of group work, peer review. All of these are examples of student to student interaction. All right, so why is it important in your courses? So if we're just kind of looking at the more compliancy side, if we look at the California Title V, it does mention student-to-student interaction in particular. It shows the difference between a correspondence course and a distance education course. So when we're thinking about correspondence courses, we're thinking about kind of those self-paced courses where you may or may not see an instructor, you're not really receiving a lot of feedback, and you're definitely not interacting with any other students within the class. And in addition to that, we don't offer correspondence courses here at Sierra College, and these sorts of courses do not or are not eligible for financial aid. And so we want to make sure that we're having those engaging discussions between or facilitating those engaging discussions and activities with our students to ensure that they're having a well-rounded experience and not kind of just feeling like they're going through a self-paced course where they're not really interacting with anyone. Great, and we can go to the next slide. Okay, so if we look at some examples of student-to-student interaction, which we will have a few slides on some helpful tools to meet RSI and the student-to-student interaction. So discussions, of course, I'm sure everybody is familiar with Canvas discussions, but maybe if you're tired of Canvas discussions, maybe you will want to use a platform like WeVideo, where you can have discussions within videos, or Harmonize, where they do have kind of the typical Canvas discussions, but there are also other options such as PDF annotation or social reading. There are also peer reviews available in Harmonize as well. And then we also have Lucid, which is more of a whiteboarding type of software where students can brainstorm different ideas together. Another example is peer reviews. Again, this is available within Canvas and Harmonize as well. There's also group note taking, document annotation, and co-created notes. These are things that you can do within a lot of our different LTIs, but I'll leave that section for Tara when it comes up. And then also collaborating on a assignment or project within Canvas, Lucid, PowerPoint, or another one of our LTIs or different softwares. And then also student-generated work and collaborations as well can be all examples of student-to-student interaction. And with that, I'll just say essentially, student-to-student interaction are the interactions that students are having together within the course, whether that is the discussions, sort of project, activity, or assignment, and they're interacting together within that same space. Alrighty. Um, and so, just to yourself, you could think, what is your main takeaway of that student-to-student interaction? What do you want students to do in your course? How do you want them to interact? What are the outcomes for the activity? Why is it important to do so? And then similar to our instructor-to-student interaction, we also have a QR code link to our student-to-student interaction page within the faculty resource guide. And I believe Tara has put that in the chat as well, so you can access the link that way. Alrighty. And just another silent reflection um, to yourself. So one thing that you want to celebrate. So, what is something that you're already doing to meet student-to-student interaction requirements that work well for your students? And then number two, looking forward, what areas do you have or see that there's room for growth? And if we want maybe one or two brave volunteers to raise their hand and say something, you're open to do that as well. No pressure though. There are a lot of people in here. Okay, I do see that there were a few raised hands. The first raised hand I see is Deborah. I'm not sure if you want to talk, but I will allow you to talk, and if you don't want to, then that's fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So are you asking me the question for number one? What am I already doing?
Yes, you can answer number one or number two, whatever works for you.
Oh, okay. So, well, there's always room for growth. I know that, but celebrating already, what I'm already doing is one thing that I found was fun for the students is I use Studio and I'll put it on a page and I'll record a question or I'll record a video of some sort. Uh, um, and then I let them answer. And so the students will respond to each other according to what they feel and what they believe. So I don't know if that makes sense. So I put the recording in. Studio has a way of letting the students answer and respond to each other. So I found that
Awesome.
they enjoy doing that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
So, would you like me to answer question one and two?
Yeah, whichever question you'd like to
Okay,
answer.
so I like to give personal one-on-one feedback when reviewing anything. It can be a discussion or an exam, so then I can support the student better. So, and I do it for when they are actually doing the right answer or the incorrect answer. So, one-to-one, that is what I like to do. But however, it is just so time consuming and I have so many sections. So I will really like to be or like find tips on being more productive on how to give that feedback. So it's not so time consuming on my side.
Okay. One example I can think off the top of my head is in the form of announcements. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. But if there are assignments where, maybe it's not as necessary to do one-to-one feedback for that particular assignment, maybe you could do some sort of class-wide feedback by using an
Mhm.
announcement and kind of detailing some of the main findings within that assignment so that students still get that feedback, but you don't have to go through and leave the feedback for each
Right.
individual
I do
student.
that. So I do that for the discussion. So I will do a summary of the responses and then I just post an announcement for that.
Okay. And I also say, I don't know the frequency of feedback that you're leaving, but maybe if you only want to leave feedback for assignments that are kind of more major assignments or hallmark assignments, rather than each individual assignment. But it's really up to you. But that's another maybe example. If you're leaving it for each assignment, maybe only choosing kind of those major projects and assignments to leave the individualized feedback.
Can we do like a video note
Do you mean as feedback?
as feedback? Yes.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, but I am not sure on how to activate that within Canvas.
I believe you can do that in SpeedGrader now. I believe
Maybe.
so.
Mhm.
I believe there is an option there. I'd have to pull it up because I can't see it in my
Yeah.
mind right now, but I believe you can
Yeah.
do that.
Oh,
Within
thank you so
Speed,
much.
yeah, within SpeedGrader, underneath the comments box, there'll be little
Mhm.
buttons, and one of
Yeah,
those is for leaving video feedback.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for those questions.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Um, this is going to be incredibly brief, just to let you all know what sort of tools are available to you. Um, and if you're interested in any of these, please do check out ProDev for in the next week or two to see when we'll hold different trainings on these. Okay. So some helpful tools to help you meet RSI are WeVideo, Harmonize, and Lucid. Of course, you could use the Canvas discussions, Canvas peer reviews, and group assignments. I feel like a lot of people already know about those. And so we wanted to share a few LTIs or integrated tools within Canvas that you could use as well. Not required, just more options to meet it. So WeVideo allows you to uh, include videos from Studio, put in a link to a YouTube video or Vimeo video, and add pop-up questions, quiz questions, and even in-video sidebar discussions. And so this is a really fun way to put in that lecture video or YouTube video, and also have the assignment all kind of integrated in the same space. So instead of watching a video on this page and then having another assignment or discussion afterwards, it can kind of all be combined in the same space. There is Harmonize, which originally started as a discussion tool and is a very interactive discussion tool where you can use video, audio, text, upload files. You can also do screen recordings and screen shares and annotations. But they've also kind of branched out to include peer review assignments, social reading, which is like a PDF annotation tool, and also polls. And so there is a lot within Harmonize that are available now. So if you're interested, we will have trainings on this throughout the semester. And we have a few already booked where the Harmonize reps will be the one to facilitate those trainings. And lastly, we have Lucid. Lucid is a little bit different here. It works really well as a collaborative space. You can assign individual assignments or class-wide collaboration spaces. And it could be used in many different ways. It could be a virtual whiteboard where students put sticky notes and text and drawing, as well as adding in charts and using diagramming or decision trees, or outlining steps in a process or protocol. And it has over 100 different templates that you can use. You can start with and then change it all up for however you need it. And you can attach that to an assignment so you have a graded assignment within Canvas. So if you're interested in any of these tools, make yourself a note to check back on ProDev in the next couple of weeks to see that schedule. We also have here, and then maybe Aisha, if you could drop some of these links in the chat. Thank you so much. For Harmonize, WeVideo, Lucid, and even Design Plus, which is an LTI, but not quite on meeting RSI. They have their own video training spaces, help guides, and so forth. So if you're really interested and want to get started right away, you can check out some of their trainings and videos as well. You can also find some of their You can also find short videos on how to use some of these features on Distance Learning's YouTube channel. And we'll have a link for that at the end here.
All right, my clock says 2:45. Everybody back and ready to go for the second half of our RSI conversation? Yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm Michelle McFarland, and I am serving as the RSI coordinator. As y'all heard this week, we put together as a result of Academic Senate's work on this, we put together our RSI team. Y'all met them earlier. They're in the room. And so the second portion of this, we're going to really be doing a faculty roundtable. But before we move into that, I want to just thank Tara and Aisha for so patiently and so completely and so excellently presenting that information to us in this format, this webinar format that we're not used to. We're all getting used to it, including me. I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself just now, and share the slides. So it's a different format. So I appreciate everyone, especially Tara and Aisha, working through those little kinks and stuff we have there. And Patricia, you too, figuring out the reactions and all that. So, oh my gosh, now I've lost all my words. So there's going to be, I'll chat for just a second longer, I promise. And then we're going to dive into the actual roundtable. So what you see up right now is the QR code to join the RSI resource guide. So you probably saw in the Q&A, I was typing in the URL to join the Canvas shell. We're going to be referring to some of the documents that are posted there. So if you haven't done it yet, there it is. So how this is going to work, we're going to start with Heather Eubanks, and then we're going to flow through a few more faculty to give you precise examples of how they utilize RSI or some RSI strategies in their courses. In the RSI resource guide, you'll also find a newly added document that breaks down practices and what meets and what doesn't meet. So it'll answer some of those questions that y'all were asking earlier. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'll hand it off to Heather, and she'll get us rolling.
All right. So again, thanks to all the folks in the first half. Great job. Thanks for sharing all those tips. A couple of things we want to point out, and I know it's coming up a little bit already in the workshop, where the idea about a welcome video, like, does that count or does it not? I think, there's so many different things that we're trying to have touch points with students. And so, like, while that welcome video maybe doesn't necessarily meet for RSI, but remember, that is an important piece that can really help humanize yourself to students. So it does have value, right? So some of the things that we're going to talk about, I'm hoping, like, when I try to think about it, is how can I do things that are going to hit all the different aspects that I want to try to meet with my students. So it's RSI, and it's also, letting the students provide feedback to me so they're seen, heard. So it's kind of like, what are those things that we can do that are really high impact in multiple ways? One of the things I want to share and point out, Michelle, we kind of talked about this, and Michelle, we kind of put this together, and also showing how the RSI practices specifically relate to our equity work. And so there's a document that is in the kit, and I think Michelle's going to maybe drop it in the chat as well, is really looking at how what we learn about different communities and how they learn and their ways of knowing really align with RSI practices too. So when we're looking at our indigenous communities, right, and at our Latinx communities, or different communities that, and our Native Hawaiian Pacific Island communities, that this aspect of building relationship and learning through talking and communication, and that those things all tie into RSI too. So this practice is good basic teaching, like we talk about, but it's also things that really align with our equitable pedagogy things that we want to be trying to do. All right, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'll be brief. I know there's a lot of words on the slide. You're going to get this deck if you haven't dropped it already, so you can look at it. I was thinking about, with the example I was going to provide real quick, is with, if you had a chance to be in the workshop this morning on attention. That was a great workshop, by the way, but seeing how, like, just this example, I can see how it ties into that too, of like, how do we refer back for that retrieval, giving students opportunity to pull back in information from previous lessons. And then what I'm sharing here is an example, like Tara and Aisha have both done a great job explaining how, like, announcements can be used to count as RSI, and in some ways they don't count depending on how you use it. So I kind of put these two things side by side. Again, you can look at it when you have more time, but essentially it's showing how I use the module checkout for one module, and then I use that as a reflection to relate to content to introduce the next module. So say, like, since I pulled my week 3 check-in, the one to the left would actually be my week 2 checkout, where I'm asking students to reflect on something that we covered, a question they had, how they could see themselves applying the information in their own life or related to their career path. So I'm asking them to reflect, but then I'm using that reflection for myself as the instructor to then bring back to them in the next week's announcement. So in that week 3 check-in, I basically, pull some themes that came up in the checkouts from the week before. And so I actually share a couple quotes. So in this case, I'm relating to one of the theories that they're learning about, where I say, I can see how where a student said, I can see how working through a process, thinking about decisional balance would be a different for someone who hasn't really felt the negative impact of their choices yet. Things like texting when you drive feel less dangerous when you haven't crashed yet, right? So they're making that connection between the theory that we're talking about and they're thinking about it. And so I'm sharing these examples back. And then the other quote is, if someone has serious health issues that impact their ability to exercise, it seems like there would need to be a lot more to do in the preparation stage of changing, because they're limited. They may need to get cleared by a doctor, they may need help, etc. For me, I can just get up and go for a walk. So so they're processing through the stages of change, but then they're also, you can see the empathy coming out in that process too. So they're humanizing what they're learning as well. So that's just kind of one way that I'm getting the students engaged with the content, and then I'm using what they share with me so they know that I'm listening. And then they're also getting to see what their classmates are sharing. And then as a follow-up to that, to solicit more interaction, I finish off with, did these things promote any ideas or questions? So then I'm asking them, like, now that we've talked about this again, what else is bubbling up? The last part there in the second paragraph is I use that like I'm clarifying something, right? Like there was something like a theme maybe that I saw in a discussion or an assignment where the students were unclear or they were maybe misusing a concept. And so I can use that announcement to clarify. So that's just one brief example of how I use those things. And they do overlap in multiple ways, right? In terms of like equitable practices, RSI, student to student, teacher to student. And so it's like a high impact, like more bang for your buck kind of thing. So then we're going to go ahead. I think Jennifer's going to just share an example, and we're going to let people run with some other things and get to steal, ideas that everybody's sharing. That's why I love this kind of space.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Jennifer Molina from Anthropology, and I started out as an on-ground instructor and then moved to online. So with it, I transitioned a lot of my on-ground techniques to online, which means you can reverse engineer them to be online to on-ground as well. So hopefully you find some value in this too. I have two tools I'd love to talk about that encourage opportunities for RSI. The first one I'll be pretty brief, the second one just a little longer. The first one I'm calling the conversation invitation. And that is when we have feedback that we're providing for student work, rather than asking questions or clarifications or asking for any kind of documentation within the actual assignment feedback, I instead ask them to hop on a quick Zoom call with me, and that's the invitation. And students almost always accept, and I have a little sample here, like, yes, 100%. Should I just navigate to the Zoom link? And I try and be as flexible as I can in meeting times that they can meet. Of course, we talk about content, but it really promotes connection as well, with the opportunity to banter before, during, and after. And over the summer, I actually conversed with a student who ended up sharing with me that he had been to not one, but 3 World Cup soccer games in person. And then that was a connection that we maintained throughout the rest of the summer session, which is super fun. Something I never would have learned unless we had that opportunity. So conversation invitations, try those out. Next slide. Thank you. The second thing I wanted to present or have an idea about is the opportunity for aesthetic experiences. And how I like to think about this is, rather than just transmitting information, actually providing opportunities to see, feel, hear, and think about the world around us in a tangible way. We know that if we can do this, we promote curiosity. Curiosity promotes wonder, and then wonder promotes investment in the kinds of content that we're talking about, which make real, authentic learning opportunities for us and also for our students as well. And I think this quote really underlies this philosophy, and that is, how many movements began when an aesthetic encounter indelibly changed our past perceptions of the world. So we have a real opportunity then to reframe the way that students see the world around them, and then, of course, build our assessments and our opportunities for conversation around that. So before we go to the next slide, will you do me the kindness of, in your head, thinking about or jotting down anything, a wild mountain gorilla? I just want you to think about some qualities, some behaviors, some physical attributes. Just take 5 seconds to think about that. Okay, got that picture in your head. Okay, I would like to invite you to accompany me to a green glade on Mount Karasoke in Rwanda, where we're going to see some real mountain gorillas. So can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, you could advance to the next slide. Thank you so much. Maybe it's easy to just keep this one up there for not that one.
Oh,
Okay. That's all right. We'll just pause it right here. When you had your picture of what a mountain gorilla may be thought of, oftentimes we think of them as being fierce or aggressive or strong. But what I try and impart is that they are joyful and loving, and the touch is so meaningful to them. And as they are meaningful to one another, they create community within their own cultures as well. And unfortunately, when we think of that ferocity, it ends up being the gorilla fathers that are vigilant in protecting their communities. And that makes them, unfortunately, subjected oftentimes to poaching, which is one of the other things that we talk about. So when you have these authentic experiences, then you can really have that opportunity for connection with the material as well. So the way I also like to use aesthetic experiences is to then invite them to create aesthetic opportunities for each other and also for me. So I have them in turn provide photos or things that they've drawn or things of that nature. And in doing so, then they can build on our content together. So in this particular image, we've got childbirth, where the newborn is descending the luge of the birth canal, and then also to demonstrate the malleability of the skull. And then on the other one, different bone cells building and removing bone as well. So allowing students maybe to provide their own creative outlook to show their connection with the material is such a valuable way of doing this together. So thank you so much. I'm going to move into Sue. Bye.
Jennifer, that was great. That was
Okay.
great. Hi, my name is Sue Cornett, and I teach chemistry. I'm going to talk about individual intentional interactions, involvement beyond the classroom, invitation to participate, and then finally, a thing about notes. So you can stay there. That's fine. I'll raise my hand for the next one, though, okay? In our department, we have 79 classes, and only 4 are hybrid. We have no fully online courses. So you may be asking, why am I talking? Also, we're in the unusual situation where we typically meet 24 students between 7 and 10 hours a week. So I've been asked to share some ideas that we use in our department to create and foster connection, which we heard yesterday and today is the key to making required substantive interaction successful. It begins with creating a safe place, individual, intentional interactions. Because we have 3 to 6 hours a week together in lab, we can learn all their names in the first week or 2. As we circulate through the room, we are able to initiate low-stakes interactions, like noticing the musician or band on their t-shirt, or their nail color, or ask them how their day is going. Because we lecture in person, we can see their faces and can respond to confusion in real time. As we learn their comfort level by watching interactions, we can sort out the best way to circle back to them and answer their unasked questions. Some students will respond to, I see some of you making a face. Is there a question out there? But others might be more responsive to a quiet one-on-one. Is there anything I can help, anything I can make sense for you? Also, as the quieter students hear a warm, kind voice respond to another student's question, they might get their answer or perhaps build enough confidence to ask their own question. In person, we get to see who is taking the temperature of the room and respond in a kind way. So I'd like to acknowledge that some who teach on the ground have a much larger challenge. If I was teaching political science and I had 5 3-unit classes with 40 students in each, there is no way that I would even try to learn 200 names that semester. Let's see. Okay, at least, can you switch the slide? Thank you. At least 34 STEM instructors took a 6-week online course called Humanizing Online STEM. In this course, we developed tools such as a liquid syllabus, a welcoming homepage, bumper videos, micro lectures, wisdom wall, and icebreakers. Not all of these are useful to me, but 2 ideas were super important and powerful: being intentionally welcoming and being a warm demander. Like all of you, I was greeting my students, stating my expectations, being inclusive, but I began to realize that I could do more. Involvement beyond the classroom. Next slide. One thing that we have done in our department for years is free Friday instructor tutoring. Each Friday from 11 to 2, we have 3 to 7 faculty in the room answering student questions. Students get to see who their next instructor might be before signing up for that next course, and they also get to see that we are human and that we like each other. It's a safe way to meet the department. Next slide. We have a very robust chemistry club that provides inclusion and connection. These students are very visible in Sewell Hall, and they coordinate with other clubs on campus to organize and sponsor things like movie nights and activities like painting with chlorophyll, growing borax crystals, and roller skate night. Next. When our students have ideas like dressing up for Halloween or celebrating Friendsgiving in pajamas, we join them. Next. We participate in student-led activities like being in the dunk tank during Pride Week. Next. We invite them to join us in school-sponsored activities such as Preview Day in the fall and Dino Days in the spring. Next. We invite them to help with the Natural Science History Museum and free first Saturdays. The chemistry department is very supportive of Laura Matzer's good work in our museum, and the students get to see that. Next. Some students have joined a local community organization with us to build food bags for a nonprofit called Rise Against Hunger. Next. And as I am sure you all do, we welcome creativity and humor in our classrooms. We see the student as an individual that has things to give. Nope, that's okay. Next. I started writing little notes to my students a year ago and talking to a student last week. Oh, go ahead and read that slide. So talking to a student last week, who was taking classes online, I was asking about them, knowing this was coming up. Chemistry majors mostly take on-ground classes, but she had taken an online class this summer and remarked that she liked verbal feedback through speed grade or the best. She loved hearing her instructor's voice. Okay, that's all I have to offer. I hope that you can find something useful in there, or hopefully it'll remind you of things that you are doing and can do more of. Thank you. And next, I believe we have Kwame. Okay.
Yes, that's me. Hi, everyone. So I have a few things that I also want to share. I teach biology. I teach all modalities. So I teach online, hybrid, and fully on ground as well. I'm sure most of these things are things that you guys do already. So maybe there are a few things I do differently that you might benefit from it. But I have weekly announcements, beginning of the week, end of the week. The only thing that might be different, or what I try to do differently, is that I may use that opportunity to re-emphasize something or explain something to the students. I would also sometimes, because I teach these courses, intro biology courses, often you're dealing with things at a cellular level, and students are not always able to connect with them. It's not practical. A lot of it is too abstract. And so I'll try, often I'm a kind of a news junkie, so I'll have information that I see that's about something that I can connect to the topic that we talked about. I will incorporate that into my announcement to make it more interesting for them to see the relevance of what we're trying to do and make those necessary connections. If you can go to the next slide, we'll come back to this one. So there's an example of an announcement, and essentially, I made them work on something during the discussion post, and I realized that some of them were making some mistakes. A lot of them really understood everything, but I used the announcement as a tool to explain things and re-emphasize what I'm trying to get across. So that's one example of how I use the announcements. Can we go back to the other slide again? Yeah. And then I do this very heavy lifting check-ins. I started doing this weekly for all my classes, but it was very, very tough. to keep up with it. So what I did for my 6-week class, 8-week classes, this is do it every other week. So every other week, then we do the check-in. And then for my 16-week, we do a tri-weekly check-in. The students really like this, and I like this as well. And especially for my online and hybrid classes, I'm able to make this connection with them. We keep conversations going all through the semester. I know what's going on with them, and it's all voluntary to the extent that they want to share. If the student decide not to share, they still get points for just saying all is well, nothing to share, great. But often more than half of the students would really share a lot about what's going on and how I can support them. They might ask questions about study skills, about something they don't understand, and anything at all. And so that's my way of connecting with my students, and I really treasure that time that I have with them. So I didn't even know this was part of the RSI thing, but it works for it, right? I'm doing something that I think I'm connecting with my students, but it's actually serving that purpose that they're talking about. And then for discussions, I have a couple of discussions, a few of them that I will let a student work through problems. So they try to teach each other something. So I have a prompt that asks certain questions, and they try to work through it. And then if they get stuck, I'll step in and provide some guidance here and there. And it's very fun when they're trying to explain things to each other. I mean, especially before AI, but now things are just, yeah. But yeah, that's something that I found very helpful as well, where they have to do these discussions and help each other with what I call the muddy points of the lectures. And then I will step in every now and then. So I get to see where they're struggling, and it informs my teaching next time. And then the last thing that I would share would be the last word. The last word is like the exit sheet that the students are given at the end of the week. And it could be in the form of a question or just their main takeaway from the lecture. And then I would go through them. I briefly respond to all of them, very briefly, but I'll look at a common theme and address it to the class and see if there are some spots that is not very clear to them. And I have an example of how that instruction goes. Can you go to my last slide? The next one. Yes, so this is the instructions I have for them regarding this assignment. And yeah, it's very good feedback for me, and they also benefit from having that interaction with me every week regarding what we're treating. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Kwame. That was awesome. I just have a few here. We're at 3:13. I know we have like, what, 17 more minutes. So I'll go quickly because I really want to encourage folks to ask questions. And we've got one more presenter after me. So one of the things that I want to share that I do is I have a weekly rhythm of announcements. And so each week, the first day of the module, I do a welcome announcement, probably like many, many of you. And in this announcement, I not only share what what we're going to do in the tasks that are that week, but also how it's relevant to their own lives and lived experiences. And I always invite students to share that relevancy as a reply to my announcement. And then on Wednesdays, I do kind of a check-in, or you can see here my one here was catching up. And so, just some kind of encouraging, checking in on them, how they're doing. And then on the last day, or a couple days before the last day, I remind them of the tasks that are due, and then also prep them for the following week and what's coming. So you can see this was like right when our final was coming up. And so the reason I'm sharing that is not because it's something unique or anything like that. It's the cadence of it. And it's the students know exactly what to expect as far as announcements go from me week to week. So that's just one little quick one. And then Tara, if you want to go to the next one. Oh, sorry, you can skip that. This is just my neuroses about how it meets RSI. Apologies. You can go back and look at that on your own. And then one of the things I do in discussions, some of y'all in some of the workshops I've done over the years probably know that my discussion participation is not something I love to do. And one of the reasons is because of well, I'll skip all that right now. But how one of the ways that I do it that is very effective, I think. So like many people, I require, a post and then replies. And so in my the first few days after I post the prompt, I really watch and I see if there's a model example of a student post. And then I will highlight that in the discussion and share, like why it's amazing and what other people could pull from it and, leading to other questions and all of that. And so that's a way to be active in a discussion without changing the direction of a discussion or influencing, kind of the thought and the thought growth that's occurring there. So those are just two of mine. What I will do with both of these is I'm going to post them in the RSI guide in the discussion part, which I hope that y'all will share examples of your work as well. Oftentimes as faculty, we're kind of in our isolated little areas, and it's so nice and so rewarding to be able to learn from one another. And so in addition to the information there, I'm hoping that that space can serve in that capacity as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Andrea Neptune, who's going to share about another opportunity for interaction.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm here to announce an exciting opportunity, which is a book club. The RSI team is encouraging all faculty to read The Joyful Online Teacher, Finding Our Fizz, and Asynchronous Classes by Flower Darby. And the college is supporting our efforts in several ways, one of which is you can get a free copy of the book. You can just head down to professional development and pick up a copy, or you can email Tracy Gomez and ask her to pop a copy in the campus mail if that's easier for you. And then you can get flex credit for reading the book, as that's one of the options for getting your flex hours. And then I will be leading a guided conversation on different sections of the book throughout the semester. So we'll be meeting the second Tuesday of every month between September and December. There are 5 chapters, and an introduction. So we'll be reading 1 to 2 chapters each time. So our first meeting is on Tuesday, September 10th. The meetings will always be from 4 to 5:30, and they will be via Zoom. So wherever you are, you can join the discussion. And so for our very first session, we'll be reading the introduction and chapter 1. We'll be doing some brief writing assignments, and then activities, and then discussion questions, so that we can talk about ways in which we are finding our fizz, and also how we can apply what we're learning about to real life teaching situations. So I'm hoping that you will all join me in these conversations. And again, you don't have to attend all 4 if you happen to miss the first 1 or 2, whatever, just pop in. Again, they will be posted in our RSI Canvas site, the meeting dates, the times, and also the reading assignments. So for example, if you're really excited about chapter 3, then you can join us in October for that discussion, or that would be November. And so excited to have all of you join us in the book club. Oh, also you can get flex credit also. So these will be, or actually they already are in the flex calendar. So you can sign up for the different sessions. And so again, you can earn flex credit for reading the book, but then also you can get flex credit for joining us on the book club sessions. So win, win, win all the way around. All right, questions and answers. We got 10 minutes left in our discussion. Who's next?
Maybe while people are thinking of their questions, I just wanted to announce that the author of that book, Flower Darby, is going to be coming to campus, and I think it's May. Is that what I'm seeing there?
No, it's going to be for convocation.
Oh, for convocation.
Nope,
Yeah,
I'm just going to step in. She's coming in for WoW in January, for WoW.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder.
And if there's no questions, it could be opportunities for people to share, I guess, if they have things they're doing, however we want to utilize this time from the wisdom in the room.
Absolutely. And we do have a closing poll whenever you're all ready for me to launch that as well.
I'll just share while it's quiet. I saw a couple folks had problems joining the RSI resource guide. If you just shoot me an email or even just post an email or your email address really quick, I can add you to it. So if you have issues joining via the link or the QR code that I posted, just please send me an email or Distance Learning an email, and we can add you.
I mentioned this to Matt yesterday, but keep in mind that for those of us like me who are teaching all classes on ground, we still need this information because we are often evaluating other faculty with an online course.
Yeah, great point, Dan. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, oh, sorry, I was testing my speaker and it's still playing. During the pandemic, I think it was Brenna Chapman who raised the idea of doing weekly check-ins with online students. And I still do that to this day. I just think it's such a great way to connect with students every week. I mean, I tell them like all is well is fine if you don't really have anything. But students do let me know what's going on in their lives or if they're having challenges with something, and we have dialogue back and forth. And in my course evaluations that I do at the end of every semester, a lot of students mention how much they appreciated that because they really felt connected to me and like I was listening and paying attention, and they love, when they get a response, and we have like some back and forth. So that's another thing that, might be a good idea if people discontinued it or never tried it. Just a quick, low stakes or no points check-in opportunity every week.
Thank you. That's great. Deborah?
Hi. So I was surprised to hear that in the discussion board, we don't have to respond to the students each time or for to every student, because every semester I have discussions every single week and I respond to them, each and every one of them, and it is time consuming, but they appreciate it. However, it gets to the point where I just can't. And so I was happy to see that I don't have to respond to each of the students, but I also I elevated the score or the points so that they would answer and respond. But is it okay to keep the points down at a minimum, like 5 points, and then have the students work with each other and not respond to them? Occasionally, not every time. I'd like to respond to most of the students, or maybe one or two each time, but not all of them. So you're saying that that is okay, not to have to respond to each student each week in the discussion board, as long as I have other things like announcements and other things that we do. Is that correct?
Who wants to take that one? So I'll go ahead and share something in the academic senate's addendum that they approved and that's posted in the RSI guide, shares some like some actual specific numbers. And so I encourage you to look in there. And you're right, like RSI, there's a lot of ways to achieve it, right? And so I would say if you're doing it in a lot of other ways and you're present in the discussions, and that is demonstrated that, every single response doesn't have to have a reply from you. However, what's important is the regular and substantive part, just like it is the substantive part's important for what the students are posting. And so it just making sure that that is there, like enough is there and it's regular. Students know what to expect. One week it's not going to be you replying to everyone, and the next week it's not, you apply to no one. And so it really, I mean, I hate to say it, but it is a little subjective, and it's a RSI is a big package, right? And so being able to plan it.
Okay. Okay, so I'm interpreting that as long as I have announcements each week, which I do, and as long as I respond to some students each week in their grade comments, which I do, well, with the major assignments, which I do, in the discussion boards, once in a while, or at least every week, respond to 2 or 3 students and letting them know that that's what's going to be happening, then I'm meeting those RSI requirements, is what I'm thinking, was what I'm hearing.
Well, that's what it sounds like to me too, in terms of what you're saying, and that's great. I think if you don't mind me also just as a little plug and encouragement, you might, excuse me, sign up for the RSI Learn and Launch, and that way you can, go through another, quick training, and then have a partner to actually, sit down and talk over and look over your class together and see, what you're doing and make sure, that we're on the same page, and then also just, come up with maybe some ideas about how to improve and etc. So, it all sounds really good. And maybe there's still, an opportunity to look into it and grow and etc.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
I can just
Wonderful.
just briefly onto that real quick. I mean, I think when we talk about these practices, and I know within the initial ad hoc work group, when we talked about this, we talked about this kind of concept of like the ceiling and the floor, right? Of the concept, and honestly, when we look at the ACCJC standards, I would ask better of us all. Right. So meeting the bare minimum of the ACCJ standards is the first kind of mark, right? But what we've really been working on, and what our encouragement has been, over the years within our DL department is really like not just trying to do the minimum. Like, how can we best serve the students in a way that's manageable, that we can keep up with, and that aligns with that. So I think just keeping that in mind too, of we want to know what the minimum standards are, but then also what aligns with really best teaching practices versus just what meets the standard. And so it's like finding the place within that spectrum, where you can settle in and know that you're doing a good job for your students and covering the bare minimum.
Right. No, I don't want to do the bare minimum. The students don't appreciate that. I agree. But I was just concerned about my time too, in terms of answering every single time, every single assignment, every single discussion board that I lay out an assignment for or a discussion for. So I was worried about that all this time, and I'm seeing that I don't have to worry about it as long as I'm meeting the requirements and maybe going a little bit above them, and also making sure that the students are being taken care of. So that's where, and I agree with you. Yes, not just the minimum. I understand what you're saying.
Absolutely. All right. I love these connections being made. It is 3:29, so we're going to wrap up here. I am going to launch our last poll. There's 4 questions. And then, Aisha, would you like to wrap us up with our resources we have available?
Sure. So as mentioned before, you can join the book club on The Joyful Online Teacher by Flower Darby. I will say I saw her at OTC this summer, and she was great. So I'm sure the book is great as well. So I definitely would recommend that. Even if you don't join the book club, you can get a copy in Pod in the LRC building. As far as distance learning workshops and trainings, we do suggest that you stay up to date with ProDev. We have not scheduled all of our trainings for the semester, but within the next week or two, we should have all of our trainings for the entire semester laid out within ProDev. So any RSI sessions, any sessions on any of the LTI tools that we mentioned, you will be able to find them there. If you have more questions about RSI in particular, you can email RSI support at sierracollege.edu, or if you just have distance learning questions, you can email our distance learning email, and everyone on the team will get that email, so someone will be able to respond to you. We also have the Sierra College Distance Learning YouTube channel with over 100 video tutorials. They are pretty short. So if you just, needed to do something really quickly and need to know how to do it, the YouTube channel may have a video there. Tara and I have worked a lot to get that up and running. I think we started off with maybe 60 or so videos, and now we have over 100. We also have the Sierra College course template that is available to you in Canvas Commons. It's a good place to start, especially for new faculty if you don't want to start building a course from scratch. And then also we have the faculty resource guide, which has a lot more resources in addition to the ones that we've already listed. And then you can also scan that QR code there for the faculty resource guide, or you can access that via Canvas. And then finally, we also have 2 different chat bots. If you're kind of wanting to experiment with some different activities or discussions or instructional content and activities, you can use the Prof bot. Or if you have more questions on RSI and accreditation in particular, you can use the RSI accreditation info chat bot here as well. We have all of those links in the slide. But thank you for joining us today, and have a good rest of your Flex Week.
Thank you. Have a great semester.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
semester.
Thank you.
Have a great semester.
Have fun interacting with your students.